action, and welcome everybody. PnP Weekly, episode 176. It is 29th of August. Autumn is here, so it just arrived this morning. So at least in here, it was 30 degrees yesterday and sunny. Now it's 15 in Fahrenheit, in Celsius, 15. Not in Fahrenheit.
Wow, we're kind of in the 22 area, which is good weather. Like that is proper weather. It's not too cold, but it's also not like insanely hot.
Yeah,
for European
standards, exactly.
Yes.
This is not actually bad. This is good because it's a bit cool and chilly, so it's good for the dogs. Anyway, in the PnP Weekly, we always talk about the latest of Microsoft 365 and weather. And we also have a visitor typically in the show. And this time it was Daniel Laskewitz. We already recorded that. Great interview. He is a cloud advocate in Microsoft Power Platform side and joined Microsoft, what was it, 4 weeks ago or something like that. Yes, so it's good discussion on Daniel's past and being an MVP and then joining Microsoft and what does he do now? And
about also very interesting perspectives and opinions about the state of Power Platform, Fusion development, Pro development in Power Platform. So really interesting points that are on top of mind for many, many folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we go to the interview, please remember hashtag PnP Weekly in the Twitter, so we know awesome videos, blog posts, writings, what you have done, so we're able to actually cover them in the weekly show. But without further ado, let's jump on the interview with Daniel. So welcome, Daniel Laskewitz, on the PnP Weekly. This is episode 176. Thank you for joining on that one. And good to have you actually on the show. No, not quite sure why you haven't been in the show in the past, but you know.
I don't know. I've been asked a couple of times, but I think it didn't work out timing wise. But
yeah, it might be. Yeah. That's actually a fair point. Now, Daniel, you recently joined Microsoft, and you've been on the MVP side. Can you talk a bit about who are you, what do you do, and let's start from there. So, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so I'm Daniel Laskewitz.
I'm in a podcast. I've been recording
So I'm Daniel Laskewitz. I come from Utrecht in the Netherlands, in the center of the Netherlands. I'm a developer advocate at Microsoft now, and I focus on the Power Platform. I used to work in consulting for 10 years, a little bit, like 10 years. And I recently made the switch to Microsoft. I used to work in consulting first in the Sharepoint space, and I was moving towards Microsoft 365, of course. That's, by the way, an interesting story, because when I started my previous job, I started at a company and a lot of people were really fans of the SharePoint on-premises world.
Yep.
And they loved the central administration, etc. So everybody was like, Office 365, SharePoint Online, and we're not going to do that. So I came in and they were like, Daniel, you go do that. And I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. Exactly that.
You've been voluntold.
But the funny part is that for me, it was really good because I started working with SharePoint Online. I learned everything about SharePoint Online, all the other apps that also are available in Office 365. And that kind of gave me a head start in the whole Microsoft 365 world. So that was really cool. And after, I guess it was 5 years, I moved into the Power Platform, which was back then not the Power Platform yet. So I worked with Microsoft Flow a lot because I used to work a lot with workflows in SharePoint. SharePoint Designer, of course.
Yep.
So I worked a lot with that. And and then I moved over to Microsoft Flow, Power Apps, etc. And I have done a lot of work with the Power Platform, but still I also did on the side a lot of stuff still with the Microsoft 365 world, because I just can't let go.
But that's actually a good question as well. Immediately, I just got a of other questions in mind, but can you let go of Microsoft 365 if you are only a Power Platform developer, a Power Platform specialist?
Well, maybe to rephrase it, is there such a thing as only a Power Platform thing?
That's actually, exactly.
No, that's exactly the point. I think that Power Platform never comes alone. That's kind of the thing. whether it's line of business apps or something like that. There's a bunch of things that you can connect to. You can connect to Azure. You can connect to Microsoft 365. Dynamics, if you want to. There's a bunch of things that you can do, of course. And I've never seen an application that's only Power Platform. Maybe there was one kind of kiosk app once in a while, but like a demo app or something where you would do something like that. But yeah, the power is also in the connectors, because the connectivity makes it really really powerful.
And that's really the power of Microsoft Cloud, right? Because the central identity, you're signed in, and then you have access on all of the different Azure and Microsoft 365 and Dynamics and so on. Sorry, Waldek, I jumped on your.
Yeah, so thinking about that, because like you said that you're coming from Sharepoint past, right? Where I mean, in other words, you've seen many things over the course of years, right? You've seen Sharepoint Designer, you've seen access services that we had at some point for building low code, no code apps.
Yeah.
So like,
true.
If you go through, I mean, like we've had quite a few things over the course of a year. So how do you see that space evolve, that low code, no code space in SharePoint /O365/Enter65 over the course of years, and the role that Power Platform plays today, and maybe even in the coming years?
Yeah, I think Power Platform was also an enabler for the low-code, no-code space inside of Microsoft 365, for instance, and also other places in Microsoft. Because if I look at what Microsoft Flow did for the replacement of SharePoint Designer, but then after that, you've seen tons of new experiences arrive in Microsoft 365, for instance, like you have the rules engine now. You have all kinds of things with the JSON formatting that you have, of course. Those kinds of things have been coming into everything in Microsoft, actually, and that's something that's really cool. And the fact that they heavily modernized it, because, of course, if we look at SharePoint Designer, you could do a lot of things. There's even things that you can do in SharePoint Designer that you can do in Microsoft Flow or Power Automate nowadays. State machine, not saying a lot about that, but that's one of those things. But there's been a huge uptake in I think the people that use it. Because before that was a lot of people who were doing a lot of things with, for instance, SharePoint Designer, but also InfoPath, etc. And I think it was also a bit of a hidden group of people, because I'm not sure if a lot of people, Microsoft probably was, but a lot of people were not really, they didn't know about all those people doing those things. I remember with also another story. I remember with all the migrations that we did from the on-premises world to the cloud world, that everybody had like a real big kingdom on their file shares with all kinds of things in there.
I didn't know we had X, and then you came across a platform with the weirdest integration, like full apps logic.
Exactly.
Do the XSD and XML that build the form. Yeah. Good old days, right?
Yeah, those things, right? And that's something that now has become a lot more visible. You see a lot more people also being in the community in there, and that's something that I love to see, because I really like seeing people that do the most amazing things for business processes. They really solve a problem. And they do that, and they can also show that to other people, and that's a cool thing.
Is it? It almost feels like that the low code, no code is now mainstream, because, as you said, we had the SharePoint Designer, we had the InfoPath, but if you really were looking into the message, especially with SharePoint Designer, was that yes, you can use it, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because it didn't have the governance, it didn't have anything, it had potential fears that you can easily break your stuff.
We released it initially.
Well, of course, when it was released initially, it was released for on-premises, and it was different. And then we moved to the cloud, and then it gets a bit more difficult because there's the dependencies there. But it's almost like Power Platform is finally making that information worker, which was the term which we used at the time, as mainstream. It's now more acceptable. It's more controlled. It's not a side thing which you shouldn't be doing. Do this pro stuff. It's like no, this is a good thing to do.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Another thing I wanted to ask, right? Because you mentioned that, well, like we get more abilities, like the rules engine, JSON formatting. Like, what does that mean for the skills that people need in order to be able to truly benefit from everything that Power Platform has to offer, right? Because like on one end, you have something like, well, drag and drop a block, and you have already Power Automate Flow, and it's a simple thing like, I don't know, get weather for today or something, right? Like notify me when there is new email. I don't know. But on the other hand, like it's exactly the, the highly advanced features you mentioned to the point where, well, pro devs can use PCF to include even code, right? To extend apps beyond what is available out of the box. So how do you see that spectrum of skills, and what do you see with customers and partners? How do they approach that?
Yeah, so what I see, it's kind of two movements. One is for the pro dev, and I'll expand a little bit more on that later. But the other one is, of course, the citizen developer, the information worker kind of thing. And what you see is one move for the citizen development is going more to no code, for instance. So you can see that there's a bunch of things already there for low code now, and they are trying to create experiences to make it even more easier to create stuff. Examples of that are that you can now upload a form, for instance, a PDF, and it can generate an app. Or you can just create something in Figma and then export that and import it into the Power Platform, and you have an app.
Is it really an app, or is it just a shell of an app, and you actually need to do something? Just to be clear on that.
You still have to do it's a shell, but
yeah,
there's some basic functionality in there, and
absolutely.
I think that in the future, maybe currently it's just a shell, but in the future it will probably be. It will get better and better. I'm sure that it's just like the formatting. That's an example that I would like to use here, because formatting used to be only JSON, the column formatting, etc. And then there was an improvement that you could just select the column and format it, and there were some choices there where you can just click and hit save, and then we were done. And I think that kind of approach is happening in Power Platform as well. But that's the citizen developer side. But the pro dev side, and that's the real interesting part for me at least, is that you can have all that, all those low code, no code experiences. But if you want to really do the pro development side of things, so you want to do a lot of components that you want to reuse, you want to do ALM kind of stories, etc. There's also a place for you there. And that's really cool to see, because in the beginning, that wasn't really the focus of the platform. They really didn't want that. They were only talking about maker. And now they are also talking about Fusion devs, etc. And that's really a cool development, I think, because you see more and more experiences that are typically pro dev. And you see that end up in the Power Platform as well.
What would be the scenarios where pro devs would be? What are they actually using? So what kind of scenarios? Where are we? When are we calling to a pro dev? We need your help.
Pro dev.
Who you can call?
So one of the things is the PCF components, of course.
But what is a PCF? Well, why would you create a PCF component? No, now I'm drilling you on this. So why would a customer be like, no, we need to do a PCF component? Which, first of all, probably most of the people don't know what is a PCF component.
Yeah. So the component could be something that you want to reuse with your own branding, etc. So if you, for instance, have some kind of library that you always use inside of your apps, and you want to do that in Power Platform as well, and it's not Fluent, for instance, because that's already there. But if there's something more like that, then you could use a PCF component and make it easy for people to reuse that within their app. So if you have, for instance, a header or a menu bar, you could create that in a PCF and then use that inside of your apps. And the funny thing is that PCF controls, they work in multiple ways. So you can have PCF controls for Canvas apps, but you can also have them for model-driven apps. So if you want to have a different experience for model-driven apps, you can do that as well.
Yeah. So if somebody would create a standard that whenever we build a Power App, a Canvas Power App in our company, there has to be the standardized branding and header section and all of that with the menus which are pointing to the same location. That's when you would actually create a PCF component. Is that the case?
Yeah. And there
in an app though, right? Because like you have a point app doing X. Like, do you want to be able, like what you say, like does that concept really fit into a concept of an app, or is it more of a web app, or maybe like a portal shell even, so I think that it's also different point of view, I guess, when you think about building apps, which might even more be like, okay, like if you start an app on your phone, well, like you open one app, you don't have you cannot launch all apps from single app, right?
Yeah. Still, most like insert again depends on a customer. They might want to have a standardized branding and things in place. But again, PCF component would be the way of doing that then, if that's the requirement. Okay. Good.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of other scenarios as well. For instance, if you create your own API, for instance, for a company, it could be really interesting to have their own APIs, and then they could generate an open API file. And from the open API file, you can create a custom connector within the Power Platform. And then you can use that within Power Apps, Power Automate, and Logic Apps, for instance. And that whole scenario is one of those scenarios that Microsoft really tried to change for the pro developer, because they have like the whole end-to-end story where you start with an API inside of Visual Studio, for instance. And then you can deploy that to API management, for instance, and then from there on you can export it to your Power Platform environment.
Yeah, and then the PCF again, just trying to translate this in the another ways of saying that. Is it almost like company-wide, like Craft Toolkit or reusable set of controls? You would be able to do those, and then it just drag and drop the PCF control in, which connects to the connector, and then it already works immediately based on the data. Is that the way of thinking that?
Yeah, it's sort of. You can of course use the connector to put the data into the PCF component, for instance. So that's what you can do in there, and then you just drag and drop the PCF control there. Then you connect to the connector, and then you get the data. That's possible there. Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, right? Because like when you look at the bigger trends, right, it seems like Power Platform is taking over the workplace and the concept or the space of apps for work. And I guess like many folks will agree that, well, Power Platform is probably the easiest way to build apps for work to a point. But there's also this other space. Well, we used to have all these years pro developers, right, who know ASP.NET, who know React, JavaScript, .NET. What does that mean for their skills, and where do you see them fit, right? Like, is it only black and white where we say it's all gonna be Power Platform and everybody should learn, expressions and Power Apps, or do you see like, well, it's a bit more nuanced, because there will always be demand for people who know web development, mobile development, desktop development?
Is this the same transition which you explained when you chose SharePoint Online and then the other people stayed in on-prem and you went there, and then is this a similar kind of?
No, it's completely different, because I think that if you look at the whole on-prem to cloud transition, I think a lot of people went to the cloud and eventually find out that the cloud was really the place to be. But in this case, I think that the pro developers, they can still have their place in other places, just not only Power Platform. But I think that also the pro developers could use low-code tools and the low-code functionality to do something more productive, because they can achieve something quicker inside of the Power Platform than they do when they use custom code, for instance. And it's maybe better maintainable, etc. Those kinds of things. So I think there's still a place for everybody. It's still you don't you're not doing only Power Platform. I think that's not going to be the case, even though I would love to. But no, it's I think there's
a Power Platform developer, right?
No, but it's like the right tool for the job, right? Because it's there's still a bunch of places where Power Platform is not a good fit. And they are really working on it. But some of the cases, if there's already a product for it that's really easily configurable and you should use that, please use that and don't try to recreate SharePoint inside of a Power App, for instance. That's kind of and that's also really a big struggle, because you can see that people, they are working a lot with Power Platform, and now they start getting better at it, and they create an app for everything. And sometimes those people should take a step back and look at what else is there.
Because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Exactly.
Because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. So being so imagine, right, like that you are a pro dev. Let's assume that you have all that experience building web apps, mobile apps, native apps, whatever. And you're curious, like, hey, like what is that Power Platform thing? What could it offer me? What is a good place for a developer to start? Because these are folks who know like things like you don't need to explain to a dev what are loops and conditions and exceptions. Like they know the basics already. Like what would be the right place for them to start to kind of experience what is available, so that they can make that choice, whether it's that or that tool, or maybe to rephrase. So that they can add Power Platform as yet another tool in toolbox that they have.
Yeah. So there's of course the docs. There's a big section for developers. So I would advise them to go there. And other than that, I always think it's good to see the whole story behind it, right? Because if you understand the story behind it, then it's easier for you to understand what they try to achieve with it. So always go look at those big presentations, like Charles Amana did one a while back, and that's like the big Power Platform presentation where he sees it going, etc. I think that's one of those places where they should look at. And also there's tons of YouTube channels, tons of community places where you can be. You can go to Discord channels. There's Discord. Oh, by the way, it's called Discord servers. We're going back to the servers.
On which you have channels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Discord servers hosting channels. Yes.
Exactly. But there are tons of places where you can be. There are newsletters, weekly newsletters. There's, for instance, Power Platform Weekly. But for developers, there's also Power Platform Developer Weekly. And there's tons of articles in there about development side of things. So if they want to know more about it, I would heavily recommend them to register for that newsletter and follow that, because there's tons of information in there. And that's basically where they can start.
Yeah. The Power Platform Weekly is a really, really well collected set of links and information. So really, and Daniel, I guess you're one of the persons behind of that, unless I'm completely mistaken.
Yeah, so, I'm one of the people there.
Kudos on doing that. So it's really well done. So on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's two. So there you have the developer one and the normal, the general one.
Yep.
But the
regular
developer one, regular. Yeah, I don't.
Plenty.
But for the pro devs, of course, the developer side of things is probably more interesting. But of course, Power Platform Weekly also has some developer stuff in there.
Yep. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Now, you joined Microsoft pretty recently, so let's switch the gears a bit. That was a good summary on the Power Platform. Any tips? How do you get employed by Microsoft? How did that happen? I can't remember my process, and it's completely different when the dinosaurs moved to Microsoft. But for you, it's been now a few months, right?
This is my first month, so it's 4 weeks now. So yeah.
How was the recruitment process, and any tips for anybody who's like I want to be working in Microsoft as a remote person.
I want to be you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I worked in consulting for a long time. I was always thinking about joining Microsoft. I was always like, I would like to experience the other side of the spectrum.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, it was not something that I wanted that bad that I was heavily trying to get a job there. But after a while, 9.5 years at my previous company,
You waited a little.
I waited a little. I was like, well, maybe it could be good to change around a bit, because I could do different things. And because of COVID, there was also a big difference, because before, when you wanted to work for Microsoft and you didn't want to work in sales kind of thing, you had to go to the US, or most of the time you had to go to the US.
That is 99.999% of people were forced to move to Redmond, basically. So
exactly.
I remember this time, and I before you can, it's just before COVID, 25 people in meeting room. I call in 11 p.m. remotely, and I'm the guy on the screen, or I'm the guy on the speakerphone, which people just forget about. So it was a bit of a different at the time, compared to how it is right now. So, but anyway,
true, right?
so.
Like, it's awesome to hear that we went through this bad thing that kind of equalized the field for everybody.
True.
Now, like through that, we were forced to work remotely, and realize, well, that isn't really that bad. Sure, like there are things like ideally, you have the choice whether you want to be in the office, whether you want to be at home, or you want to organize your day around what's important to you and needed. But at least now we kind of acknowledge that as well. That's an okay thing. Like, it's perfectly fine for folks to call in. Like, you don't have to be on site.
Yeah.
And there are ways for us to work to work efficiently still.
And now in every single meeting invite, there's typically a Teams link. That wasn't the case. It's pretty awkward to, like, 5 minutes already meeting going, and then you start pinging people and saying, hey, so there was no team. Hey, I would like to. I would just
I'm here.
like to.
I'm here.
Exactly.
Hello. Yeah. No, but for me, it was I didn't want to go to the US because I love the Netherlands and I love the place here, and that's why I didn't want to move there. Before, there were some questions from people from Microsoft. Would you like to work here, and would you like to apply? And then I was like, is it a remote role? No.
No.
Exactly that. So that's why I never did that. But after COVID, I talked to April Dunham, and she said, well, there's a role in my team that's opening up, and would you like to apply? And I said yes, and I applied. and then I had a big interview loop, etc. So it took like 4 interviews. They had some trouble finding people, by the way, because I know a lot of people at Microsoft, and some of them said, "Well, I can't interview Daniel because I know him too well." So
you mean that?
struggle.
When you said they had trouble finding people, I was like, they had trouble finding people to interview you. Because you were too connected. Yeah,
exactly.
So based on that, right? Because like oftentimes you hear like externally, it's kind of a visible thing. Like, for example, if you are a dev and you want to join, there's this, the lead code or lead code things where you learn about algorithms and loops and code. Like, is there anything for advocate to learn up front, especially in the Power Platform space? Like were you grilled on your tech skills or your community skills, presentation, people skills? Like, what kind of areas people need to keep in mind to prep for a job in this space?
Yeah, I think what's always the best thing, and that's for every job, is always look at people who are interviewing you, because it's really good to know what these people want from the person that's gonna have the role eventually. So you should kind of think about, well, what does this person want from me when I get the job? That's something that you should be aware of. And a lot of people I talk to, they when they have an interview, they don't do that. And I was like, why don't you do that? Because that's like the main prep that you need to do before you have an interview, of course. But that's like the generic stuff. But on the developer advocacy, yeah, for me it was I did a lot of things in the community already. So I was an MVP. I presented at a lot of events. I had a lot of contacts there, and I always tried to do open source things. For instance, whenever I could, I always tried to help. For instance, patterns and practices as well. All those kinds of things, and that made it probably easier for me to roll into this role because. Yeah, that's basically what they are grilling you on. Like what are you gonna do when you arrive in this role? What's gonna be your focus? And we need people for this and this and this. Can you do that? And then they ask some check questions, of course. So yeah, that's and it was pretty funny, by the way, because I had 4 interviews, and just before that, a couple months before that, I got grilled on the technical skills of the Power Platform because I did the fast track recognized solution architect process. So I had so many questions back then that I knew everything about what they are gonna ask.
Perfect.
So that was really good.
Then you were grilled. You came back to us saying, "Hey guys, so I just did this exam. I have feedback for you." You sent like 10 pages A4 feedback, and now like, oh, you were that guy.
It was really funny.
But and related on this interviews, I think Gavin said it really well. Was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? That one of the key points in the interview at this level of a career, you've been 10 years already as a consultant and all of that, is also making sure that the position which you're applying is suitable for you. So it's not just that you're being accepted. No. It's also making sure that. Is this really the thing what I want to do, and what are they expecting me to do? And that's actually something what quite often happens when you're a younger person, not necessarily that experienced. You apply for a job, you're just hunting for getting the job. But then, is it really a match or
yes
not?
And no, right? So I have experience with working at companies 25 odd folks, and I think that idea that you apply for a job and the job is there to stay applies more there than it is the case at Microsoft.
True.
Because at Microsoft we're more adapting to the market as opposed to like if you join a company of 2025 folks, it's more fixed. Like we have a kind of a business. You are an SI, ISV, and that's the thing you do. And if you're a dev, well, you're a dev and you're working that, and there's nothing else. Whereas at Microsoft, priorities change, the market evolves, and we evolve with it.
True.
And that makes it, well, you apply for a job today, but maybe in a year things will change and something else will be more important. And then with that, you'll have more room to grow.
True.
So it's also this thing like don't get too hung up on the things you apply for today.
And that's for sure one of the things which is being evaluated when you're getting interviewed in Microsoft as well, which is like how well are you dealing with changes and flexible and all of that. So is it basically I'm locked into this thing and I will not do anything else, or
I want to do X.
I will never do anything else than X, or it's basically the how willingness are you able to adapt change, which is a really, really key point. If you think about the let's say social situation, the economic situation right now, we're seeing some dark clouds here and there. It's getting autumn,
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. So, and right now, it might be hard to predict where we are within a year or 2 or 3. But having that flexibility on, okay, I'll adapt, rather than being, no, I will do my thing for upcoming 20 years.
And it goes two ways. Because on one hand, like imagine you are a passionate person about ML, algorithms, machine learning, and so forth and so on. Let's say, and I'm not saying that is the case, but let's say like this is a big priority for us now. And you want to like you see that Microsoft is a great fit for as an employer, place to work, colleagues, atmosphere, technology. Let's say in a year things will change and we will be like AI will be the thing. ML is deprioritized because reasons. I mean, again, all theory. That's not the case. You can go about 2 ways. You can say, hey, Microsoft is a great place to work. I will adapt. Or you can say, well, I'm passionate about ML. I want to drive change in this space. This isn't a thing here. And I
let me go to another location. Exactly.
That drives that area, because that is where my heart is. So it goes really two ways, right? And again, everybody needs to define like what is the thing for them. Well, where do they have the passion? Is it the topic area, or is it really the company and you want to drive something within that group of folks because you see the potential there, right? And there's no right or wrong there.
Yeah, and I also see a lot of people in Microsoft move around. And that's also a big thing. I think that's probably in Microsoft is more than in other companies. I've seen within my previous company, I've seen people switch roles. But within Microsoft, all the PMs that I have worked with over the years, there's so many people that changed roles within Microsoft from one product to another, from SharePoint to PowerPoint, even those kinds of things. I've seen that a lot, and I think that's also really interesting to see as well, because that's also evolving your job, of course.
True, and then you get to experience how that organization works, because organizations are quite like startups, and the projects are quite like startup. There's a different kind of leadership. There's a different kind of management chain, management model, policies. All of that are different across the different organizations. Customer ecosystem,
so and all have the impact on it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and having that kind of a changes between organizations is actually not too bad, because then you understand different ways of delivering and more experience on options. So tells the person who's been in SharePoint area for how many years?
I was just thinking about it before I said it. I was again, like, I think Vesa has
something to say, right? Because
now that
for a long time, and you've seen that change.
Yeah.
And the learnings you have over time, there's value to that too.
True. And it's not like we're super isolated, so only on certain things. No. The things you've seen throughout the years. Anyway, so cool. Now we're a bit of over time. We don't want to keep you here because Daniel, you might have some other bookings as well. But
mandatory training to do.
Yes. Those things. But those are super fun quite often, actually. Some of them are really cool. So.
I'm almost done.
Yes. I'm all done for this quarter, so it's anyway. So, but thank you, Daniel, joining in here. Really cool to have a chat with you. Congratulations joining Microsoft one more time. It's great to have you in the company as well. We've been knowing each other for many years, so it's awesome to have more people who have the field experience as well. So we need kind of both kind of people. The Redmond engineering people, and then the people who understands the customer really well as well. Like
Thanks for having me.
So
thanks for having me.
Now, before we close, let's do a quick 1 minute. What's going to happen this week? Anything interesting on your side? Anything what you're working on, which would be super cool, which you can maybe mention? What's happening? Something. We are under NDA with friends.
NDA.
Exactly.
All NDA, no.
We will not tell anybody about this call.
Yeah, just between friends,
No, I'm working on a workshop, which is really cool. So that's going to be something that will highlight one of the features of the Power Platform. So that's something that's really cool, and I'm gonna work on the custom connector side of things in that workshop as well. So that's gonna be really cool, and we'll release that probably in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
so that's
around the Power Platform conference, which is coming.
I think so.
Yeah.
Surprise! There is this conference, this big place. We might, share a thing or two,
So that's going to be really cool, and I'm still finding my way and looking at all the cool products all the cool projects that I can do, and picking all those projects together. So that's going to be really cool.
Don't pick too much. So just. Because there has to be some free time and creative mind thinking as well. So
and also you have to finish, right? Because
yes, exactly.
If you put too much in it, then nothing gets finished. That's the problem, right?
Anything interesting on your side, Waldek? What's happening this week?
We've just shipped a new version of CLI for Microsoft 365 today, as we're recording that just a few hours back.
Is that the V6? No, that's
no. So
okay.
V6,
so that's the major is in preview. Yes, that's what it was.
Yes. So V6 is coming. We kind of hope end of October, because we have most breaking changes already done. But now we're in a stage where we want to give people, enough time to test everything that they have. We don't want to do it overnight. Ta-da! We shipped it and now everything breaks. We're not doing that, right? So we're giving people roughly 2 months in advance room to test everything that they have. And you can test the V6 already. We have instructions for that. So that is 1. 2, again, still working on some bigger plans for a bigger chunk of the year. So that's coming. 3, I just saw on my list. I have a thing to help you, Vesa, with something for an upcoming event.
Maybe. So yeah, we need to talk about that one. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that is also something on this week. And other than that, I will be a PM for remodeling a kitchen at home. It's something that I hoped I would be able to avoid. Unfortunately, I won't be. So I am now planning, like building dependency chart, like who's coming when, who do I need to plan so that everything's, removed and dry, and there is room for people and people are not in each other's ways. And trying to plan like, well, there will be days without maybe water, maybe electricity, because I'm getting additional skills.
Yep, that's good. That's how you learn. Push yourself on the limit, so that's always good. On my side, Sharepoint Framework 1.16 is going to be released today as a preview. So that's a new version. So today, as this is getting released, that's in like tomorrow, as we're recording this on,
Ooh, what would be any 2 or 3 things?
There's actually a really cool new way of doing custom in the web part. When you're hovering on top of the web part where you have the edit web part, you can add custom buttons and actions there, starting from 1.16. So there's multiple ways of kind of improving the end user and administrative experiences. And then Microsoft Teams v2 JavaScript SDK will be the default in the SPFX. So
what is the benefit of that for folks?
Ultimately, that's all driving towards the thinking where you can build Microsoft Teams and Outlook and Office applications with SPFX, because then the V2 of JavaScript is enabling the Outlook scenarios as well. So for pro developers,
build once and expose your app across multiple locations.
Correct. Yes.
Cool. And that will be available in SPFX. 1.16 preview.
1.16 preview. We'll start talking about it. It starts rolling out at some point. So we'll have a blog post on that one tomorrow. So,
brilliant.
And then we're going to promote a bit more on the Viva Connection Toolkit, which we've been working together with Elio. So, but really kind of a kicking off that preview this week. Communication. We need people to test the VS Code extension, so we can actually release that a bit later this year. So,
exciting times.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, which is cool. But thank you, Daniel, and sorry for taking a bit more extra time. Your calendar.
1 minute.
Yeah. 1 minute? What?
Only 1 minute.
Yeah. True. Always happen. But thank you, Daniel, joining us. Really, really cool. We'll get you back on the show for sure, sooner or later, a bit, maybe somewhere around 200.
Sooner than 4 years.
Yeah, about sooner than 4 years. It's good to catch up whenever you have then workshop materials and all of that available, and kind of coming back in 6 months to have a discussion on how does it now feel to be in Microsoft. So
thanks a lot.
Great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And excellent. Thank you, Daniel, one more time joining us on the interview. Really good to catch up as well. It's been a while since we actually been in a meeting, but congratulations, like 26th time already in this call on joining Microsoft. Good to have, as mentioned, field people joining, because there's a good level of tenant experience around the customers and ecosystem and partner ecosystem, and that's really things which we need as well. So getting that feedback in and then adjusting the products and offerings based on that input. So really, really cool stuff. Should we jump on the articles, Waldek?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Let me share my screen. Share. And that screen. There we go. So from last week, from Colette Stahlbauer, from intuitive sharing with OneDrive to drive prioritization with Viva Goals. Here's what's new in Microsoft 365. A nice blog post summary on the Microsoft 365 blog, related on the latest announcements in the Microsoft 365 with Viva and also on the OneDrive. So OneDrive has this, there's a improved sharing capabilities, which actually is working really well. We've been using this internally for a long time, but this is actually interesting. So OneDrive has a new welcome homepage where surfacing information, what other people are sharing and doing and adjusting. And of course the files which you have in OneDrive, but it's another view that the what is it? Is it the enterprise feed, so to say, around what are the changes within a file level? So, which is kind of a cool that you can easily get access to that and understand that. And then other stuff like the Microsoft Office has new experiences, the views on the feeds and enterprise views. Microsoft Lens has new features, good point, and that is a really cool application, by the way, as well. And then we have the Viva Calls, which went GA as well. I guess we have another news article on that one as well in the later part. The next news was around Adaption Score.
Exactly, right? So one of the things that is top of mind for everyone is that when you buy a product, you want to learn over time how well is it being used? Is it being used? Which areas are being used? So kind of get insights into how well the adoption goes. And now, apparently, that will be available on Microsoft 365. So you will be able to learn how your colleagues are working with Microsoft 365. Do they really embrace services that you roll out for them? Or maybe there are some points where you could do better. So it's not really to monitor their work, but to monitor the adoption of services.
Yep. There's this quadrillion, billions and billions of signals here and there, which are getting attracted and then calculated to an understandable score to understand, is it being adapted? Are we paying money for the right things or not? And exactly. Then that helps on improving the, the return of investment. That's the key point. What is it? Return of investments. It is return. What? Next. Okay. So Mark Cashman had a blog post around use Microsoft lists for your next marketing campaign with the video. Really cool with the video again on showing different capabilities, what we can do. Let me mute that so I don't hear Mark telling to my ear what's actually happening, but really explaining the value of the Microsoft lists and what you can do and how do you connect that, for example, for Power Automate, and then get additional benefits out of there, and surfacing information, using the information directly in the Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft List is certainly the easiest way to build quite elaborate integrations and quite elaborate presentations as well. So Chris Kent has been working a lot about these samples, how we can improve the presentation on the Microsoft List. So really, really cool stuff for sure. Then there was an article on the Microsoft Teams blog. So
exactly, right. So oftentimes we talk about bringing your apps to Microsoft Teams, because Microsoft Teams is the place where, well, many people spend majority of their day. We communicate, we are on meetings, we communicate about files, about our work. So we are in there already. So why not bring applications from your work into Teams and have them where you already are, as opposed to, you know, having to keep track of bookmarks and these different applications each by themselves, right? So bring applications to where you already are. On the other hand, maybe in your role, you don't spend majority of your day in Teams. Maybe you actually keep track of, or maybe you spend majority of your day in your application because you manage orders or you manage some other things. So that is the place where you are. You still will have that need to be able to communicate with colleagues and others, right? So the cool thing is that as much as we can bring applications to Teams, we can now also bring Microsoft Teams and some features that offers to applications. So we can chat, we can have videos directly in the apps. And the really cool scenarios around that are, for example, when you talk about B2C. So you as a company want to communicate with your customers who aren't on Teams, right? So think about things like, you know, consult, or whether it's about mortgage or a doctor, physician, you name it, like all kinds of meetings with a customer, you can build for them an application and power that app with abilities directly from Teams. So things like chat, video calls, and all of that, have that available. So you don't need to build that by yourself. You can bring Teams to your app. This is really, really cool.
So, and on the Microsoft Viva side, really important announcement. So Microsoft Viva Engage is now generally available. Microsoft Viva Engage is basically an evolution of the Yammer Communities app, which integrates then the Yammer inside of the Microsoft Teams. And we've been using this internally for a long time, and it's actually really cool. So at least in the scale of Microsoft, our Yammer is quite active, and there's a lot of communities and a lot of stuff happening in the Yammer as well. So it's a really great way of surfacing then that community information directly in Teams. Really cool stuff.
Yep.
Then we had a blog post from Aika.
Yes, so my colleague Aika wrote an article about how you could build a productivity dashboard with Microsoft Teams Toolkit. Right, and the idea is that like in Teams, and if you think about Teams, Viva, Yammer, there's a lot of notion around the idea of an org, right, or a team. But there's nothing specifically for you, like a place where you could start your own day and to get a quick glance about everything going on around you. So your email tasks, upcoming appointments, and so forth and so on. Right, so Aisha shows how you can use the Teams Toolkit for VS, so Visual Studio, and build a .NET-based Teams app that will then use the Microsoft Graph and bring all the info from your workplace, from Microsoft 365, into a single place to give you that quick overview across the board. Really cool case.
Really cool case for sure. And the coolest thing is really the amount of code what is needed to actually make this happen with the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So really awesome stuff. So really simple, really efficient. It's basically 3 controls, put it on a page, and 4 controls, including the logging.
Thanks to MGT, right? The Microsoft Graph Toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. And really cool stuff. So absolutely brilliant stuff. Then we had a blog post from Ben Summers around how cloud storage partners integrate their services with Microsoft Teams and Office. So we can integrate the cloud storage partners directly in Office clients. And there's been a scenario for a long time already, but because you might actually have storage options which are not actually within the Microsoft 365, and you want to surface those files and assets still within the Office and in the Microsoft 365. And this really talks about those integration capabilities and options and scenarios, how to make things happen and what we can do here. So really cool way of getting that external storage systems also surfaced in the Microsoft Teams. Thank you, Ben, on that one. And we do have a specific CSBP program for that, so making sure that people can, there's a way of getting that to happen with support. So really cool stuff. Now, CLI had a new version, 5.7. During our interview, or at some point we mentioned already the 6.0, but this isn't yet that. So this is
correct. So today, as we record this, we released a new version of CLI for Microsoft 365, version 5.7, again with new commands and improvements. So to highlight a few things, support for bookings, support or extended support for permissions in SPO, Sharepoint, and also new abilities to create Azure AD apps directly with the admin on Send. To name the few things, there is way more. So definitely check out the article, check out the release notes, the full list. And again, big thanks for everybody who helped us, because we would never be able to do that alone.
Yep, absolutely. Great stuff, and awesome to see this evolve as well. Now, we also had a new blog post from Louisa Fries around the start of a series, which is around build Power Apps that don't look like Power Apps, a material design, part 1. So material design is Google's design language, and how you could, if that's a standard within your company, how you would be able to use those kind of designs then within the Power Apps. So explaining the steps and requirements and how things can be done within the Power Apps, and that was a part 1. So you can actually then, this is going to evolve with the upcoming steps as well. And as we talked with the discussion with Daniel, you are able to create controls which are basically providing this more efficiently for you. And Louisa is going to talk about that one in the future as well, for sure. Then Marcus Müller had a new blog post as well.
Exactly, about how can you use the Microsoft Graph and features that it offers to get SharePoint list items as efficiently as you can, right? So on Microsoft Graph, there is the Delta approach that allows you to get only items that have changed since the last time you got them. So imagine that you have you persist kind of state in your app, or you have cache or something, and you load your app, you show the data that you got the last time, but you also want to refresh that. So using the delta, you can send the last token you had the last time so that you only get the change and not everything, which will speed up the experience of your app significantly. So how do you go about it? Check out the article.
Yep, really, really cool stuff. Thank you, Marcus, on that one. And then there was a blog post from Martin Linkstell around getting notified of a service incidents in Microsoft Teams and really setting up the automation how to do that with CLI for Microsoft 365, which is hosted in Azure Function. So really, really, really cool setup on getting then updates directly within the Microsoft Teams. And this would be quite useful, at least in my case, and I guess in your case as well, Waldek, we are actually working inside of the Teams. So getting those messages in Teams that say, hey, you need to now react on this is actually a positive thing. Now, is it it's better in Teams than in email for sure, but you know.
And I mean, it depends where you want it to be. The cool thing is you could do both, right? So with CLI for Microsoft 365, you can just as easily create adaptive card or send an email, right? And the point being here is that you minimize the amount of custom code you have to write. You use a tool that you already know for a purpose to bring that info to your fingertips where you already are, whether that's email or whether that's Teams, so that you can stay up to date on the things that matter to you, right?
Yep, absolutely. Really, really cool stuff. Now, on the video side, there was a new video series released pretty recently around all things Microsoft Cloud, which is Aisha and Dan. And last week, and they had a really nice video related on the Microsoft Graph. So Gina Arenas, she's the creator and the leads the team who is now running the show within the Microsoft Graph, or has been running the show since the creation of the Graph. Then they're having a nice 9-minute interview on what is Graph, why does it matter, where did it come from, and all of that stuff. So really, really cool 10-minute time investments, which we highly recommend you to check out to understand the backside story as well, which is important. Why would I? So, and of course you would use Graph. Exactly. Now, then there was a video from Paula.
Yes, in episode 219 of PS's Tech Bytes, Paula talks about using the search filter web parts of the PnP Modern Search collection, right? So PnP Modern Search is an open source set of search controls and features, right, that you can use in your intranet to offer a tailored search experience to users, right, in your org. And Paula, over the course of the last weeks, have been talking about the different aspects of what is inside PnP Modern Search. And this time around, he talks about filters. So if you're interested in that, check it out.
Yeah, really, really cool. And this integrates to Graph Search and then also the classic search as well. So there's multiple options available for customers. Then there was a really nice video from Travis related on getting started with Microsoft Graph and PowerShell. And so what is that and how do I get started with it? What are the different modules which are available? Let me put the audio on. And how do I install the required modules to my environment? But yeah, how do we connect to the Graph and how does it actually work inside of the PowerShell? So really, really cool stuff. And Graph PowerShell does expose all of the different functionalities which we have in the Microsoft Graph as an API. So really, really a lot of opportunities for automation. And then the last video was from Robert.
Exactly. So intro, how to build a SharePoint web part using SharePoint Framework, PnP, and React.js. So kind of the most popular tool set, and it's up to date already with SharePoint Framework 1.15, which was released in July, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And Robert walks us through how you would start this, how you would use some of the tooling that is offered by Microsoft and Community to build a web part, basically a widget that you would put on a page in a really efficient way with minimum code and maximum efficiency.
Really, really cool stuff. Cool. I will stop presenting. Awesome stuff from Robert, Dev Talk as well. So great stuff on there. And we already went through what's happening this week. I guess it's time to close up.
Yeah, it's about time. We talked a lot already. So
yes, it
how
is.
about we give you time back to go through all these cool links and articles and videos. And if you write something yourself, if you write, if you record, if you build samples, if you build apps, let us know about it, because we want to give you the stage and help you share it with everyone else. Tag us on Twitter with PnP Weekly. And I guess we will be back next week.
We'll be back in next week. See you later. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.